songwriting and all that has always been a very, very important part of who I am. And did a lot of it. I miss it. Would like to do more of it. And I'm hoping this will be a new era of collaboration and hopefully more Grammys to come along. My name is Ti-Garçon. I'm from Newfoundland. I now reside in New Brunswick.
Well, for those of you who don't already know me, I usually go by the name of T-Boy. I'm a singer-songwriter and presently based out of Ontario.
Hi, I'm Cecil Eugene. I'm a songwriter from Ontario.
Hi, I'm Clayton Phillips. I am originally from Newfoundland. I currently reside in Ontario, and I'm a songwriter.
My name is Dave Carey. I'm a musician, songwriter, and I work out of Campbellville, Ontario.
Hi, I'm Dan McKelvey, and I'm a marketer, writer, songwriter from Mississauga, Ontario.
I grew up in a musical family. My dad played guitar. My mom, I remember her playing accordion. They sang a lot when they had parties. My brother plays guitar. My sister was in the choir. So there was a lot of music around me when I grew up.
Well, originally I heard my grandfather play the fiddle and accordion, and my father played the violin, accordion, and guitar. And he had many recordings of Irish traditional music, and all of that music was very inspiring. And every time I'd listen to a new recording, I would try to copy that player.
You know, I probably when I was younger, and I'm going to say it was like kindergarten age. And it's a little hazy, but I can remember listening to Perry Como, the introduction to the Perry Como show. It was like, "Dream along with me, I'm on my way to a star," that type of thing. And I think as a kid, something like that really attracted me, really captivated my imagination. And then, songs from, when you're 4 or 5, like a white sport coat and a pink carnation, or honeycomb, those types of songs really intrigued me and brought me to music. And from there, I guess I had a bit of a voice at that time. So then we got involved in the Kiwanis music festivals and that type of thing. So there was some music and singing, and that's my earliest recollection.
Well, my parents told me that when I was a kid, they'd be watching TV and the commercials would come on, and I would just kind of run up to the TV and just stand there, listen to all the music and the commercials. Then when the show would come back, I'd run away, and then I'd just run back when the commercials were there. So I think that's when they kind of figured I was into music, and they got me, I think, my guitar when I was like 12, 11 or 12.
My mom always sang. And I guess it was very early on in my life that singing was always, and I always sang. I always sang naturally. I always was always a verse or a tune in my head, and even today, it's something that I always, and my kids, I guess, sing because of that. But yeah, I mean, other than my immediate family playing violin or the accordion, I guess within my own home, I guess when I grew up, I guess the most strong influence was my mom and singing and encouraging me to sing. So yeah.
Through my mother. She'd sing around the house all day, and she'd sing to me. Secondly would be my sisters. They were quite famous when they were young, and if they weren't on television, you can bet that they were around the house practicing. My third introduction, I do believe, probably the most significant for me personally, would have come from just a little transistor radio that my dad had. That little radio was only AM, so it was mono, and it played everything from the 20s, 30s, 40s, jazz era, 60s, 70s, and of course for me, most important, the experimental 80s. Everything about the 80s attracted me to music. Musically, of course, and lyrically.
I started off playing I guess it was piano first. So I was tortured, you know, as most children were, by piano teachers who were seemed to be in their 90s, you know, and who would, you know, rap you. And I always remember her writing in the notebook, you know, paid $3.50, and the balance is this, and you owe this, and you know, that type of thing. For me, I was more of a singer than a piano player. So, but that was the first instrument, was piano.
And eventually moved on to.
Yeah, eventually moved on to guitar. And so, you know, Christmas present, because, you know, the Beatles played the guitar, and they didn't play the piano, or they didn't play the accordion. You know, they played guitars, and that seemed to be the way. And Tommy Smothers played the guitar. And I was a big Tommy Smothers Brothers fan, so.
Yes, I have 3 brothers who play various instruments. My father made sure that all of us played something of some sort.
Next question.
Yeah, I took lessons when I was 12, did concert band, played the sax in high school. Basically was in band since I was like 15. Eventually ended up going to York University for jazz. So yeah, I'd like to think I'm a musician.
I would suspect that if someone was to look at me and judge me, I would say they would say no. But again, you know, I've always sang. When I played with groups when I was a lot younger, I always had either a set of spoons in my hand, or so I guess if I had to belt out as a instrumentalist, I would say that maybe I was kind of a pseudo percussionist.
Well, first it was the melody that attracted me to most songs. So I'd hear that melody and listen to the lyrics. And as I got older, now I'm finding that the lyrics come first and the melody comes later.
Well, for me, it's not a nice thing to say. I mean, most of my favorite songs as a child and as an adult, I can only sing you know, a phrase here and there. I don't know all the words to all the songs. But ask me with the drum, bass, guitar, and keyboard parts, now we can sit down and discuss music. For me, it always was melody. Melody always attracted me to the song. And in a lot of my songs, I always try to do that. I do write words, mind you, but I always try to evoke emotion with the music just before the lyrics come in. Just giving you those 2 feelings, those 2 different temperaments. 1 for the melody and 2 for the lyric.
I mean, it was the melody at first, and then as you get better at your respective instrument, you start writing lyrics, and then the lyrics come first and the melody comes second. But it really changes with each song, really.
You know, I'd really like to say it was lyric at first, but very quickly, melody took over and became sort of the driving force with me. Not only melody, but harmony and counterpoint and that whole experience.
I believe when I first fell in love with music, it was the melody. But later on, as I grew older, it was the lyrics that captivated me, that made me love a song. And I think my songwriting style is the same. I believe that when you write a song, it should be right away. The words should capture what you're trying to say. It should also bring in the audience and make them want to listen to what you have to say.
Stare at the window, not too sure what I'd see. Another kid murdered was the news on TV. Why can't we live in peace and harmony? Living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. We sit in the kitchen while the kids are asleep. How can we raise them in this world of deceit? I turn to God and pray that He will hear me. Living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. So tell me why should we think about tomorrow? Tell me why can't we live as friends? We have to leave something for our children to see. Living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. The life we've created is the life we destroy. What are we leaving for our kids to enjoy? They all have dreams of how they'd like it to be. Living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. So tell me why should we think about tomorrow? Tell me why can't we live as friends? We have to leave something for our children to see. And living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. So tell me why don't we think about tomorrow? Tell me why can we live as friends? We have to leave something for our children to see. But living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be. Sometimes I think of how I'd like it to be. Living in this world ain't what it's cracked up to be.
Well, I was taking lessons, and one of the songs that I was really focused on was Hotel California by the Eagles, to play that awesome guitar solo. So that's the song that kind of drew me into start a band, so I could, play that solo in front of people.
I was about 11 or 12 years old, and it was a fad at the time, but the little shortwave transistor radios were available. So we were given that for Christmas. And I remember every night, going to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock. I mean, realistically, going to bed at 10 o'clock. But under the covers, flicking through the stations. Oh, loved it, loved it. And after 12 o'clock at night, because there was less interference, because of shortwave, you get stations from maybe Quebec or Nova Scotia. Jeez, Love is a Battlefield, Studio, Thriller. Wouldn't it be good if we could wish ourselves away? Nick Kershaw. Wonderful, wonderful array of music. Still to this day, got that vibe for it. Love it.
When I was younger, I was mostly listening to Canadian folk musicians, Gordon Lightfoot, Bruce Cockburn, Stan Rogers, and basically my style of writing now is influenced by these main Canadian folk musicians.
It was the Beatles that captivated you from the radio and from the airplay and from watching them on Ed Sullivan's show. So that rock type, but at that time it was just as much Dave Clark Five and the Stones, and then got into like a Paul Simon, all of that around that time, which was all guitar based, was very captivating. One thing I didn't realize at the time, that my mother in her off hours might have listened to a lot of bossa nova, and that seeped into my head as well. So I've always had a fondness, and that's my first go-to music.
I remember the first time I really knew that I loved music and I wanted to write songs was when I got a little transistor radio from my parents for Christmas. And and I was listening to the top 40, and back then there was a song by Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart. That was on every day, every day. It was number one for 12 weeks, 14 weeks, and I knew that I loved music when I would hear that song. I'd hear all the different parts of the song. It was so complex, and I knew I'd like to create something like that.
I guess my first influences were the Carpenters. I guess the first music I actually remember hearing was the Carpenters. Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, or Sweet Sweet Smile. And I guess that was, obviously it's American, so it's kind of a rock and roll background, or there's a vibe is more rock and roll. But at the same time, the rock and roll was what I got from a stereo. It wasn't what I got in my family. My family was, it was violin music and step dancing and all that. So I guess those predominantly were probably my first influences, yeah.
I first started, I guess, writing songs when I got out of high school. I was basically tired of singing other people's music, and I said, well, I better come up with some original material and try to convey some of my thoughts across.
We started from laughing at ourselves and laughing at each other. That's kind of how it started. But I guess from a very early point, language and preservation of French was an important part of that. And that kind of evolved into starting to write stuff about who we were and the state of French Newfoundland and culture and heritage and all that. So I guess the latter part of our work was, I guess, more focused on good lyrics and good music, and trying to make that work, but from a perspective of trying to celebrate a heritage and a language that was in evolution and in fear of loss,
Well, I wrote my first song for a teacher of mine that passed away when I was in high school, and I showed it to one of my other teachers, and he's like, "This is a really good song. You should record it, put it on YouTube." So I did, and then they ended up showcasing it at the assembly on this memorial thing. So after that day, I just kind of kept writing and haven't stopped.
My first attempt at writing a song, I was about 12 years old, 13 years old. I was just learning my first 3 chords on guitar, and I know I wrote the whole song. I don't remember what it is. I don't think I've ever played it for anybody, but that was the first time that I knew I could do it, or at least I thought I knew that I could do it.
Yeah, well, Danny and Bob was my first group. He was the guy across the street. We even had our own song. But and then we met other guys in high school, and as I say, we still sing with and play with to this day. And we became a little group called Motel, and we would do Sadie Hawkins dance and that type of thing. But it was always pretty sporadic as far as that goes.
I can't be specific as to when I started writing songs. All I can tell you is that I've always written songs. On the swing at the house, I would create little melodies, little words, and it must have been significant to me because I would come back day after day on the same swing, and I would memorize these words and the melodies and sing them. Later on, about 10, 11 years old or so, the school would get us to go to the neighboring town for swimming lessons. And on the bus, while everybody else was going crazy, having fun, I would put my head against the glass of the bus as we drove, and I would just sing my songs. And for those of you who don't believe me, you can ask my best friend at the time, and he used to put his head adjacent to mine and listen to me sing. Isn't that right, Mr. Tempest?
Mostly at the very beginning, obsessed with comedy and writing songs that were, I guess more satire based. But I guess early on you realize that you want to try to create something that has meaning, I guess. And when we were growing up, there was no French Newfoundland music that had lyrics. So I guess we decided it doesn't exist, so I just want to do it. And we weren't very interested in having any limitations. And there was no one to tell us we couldn't do it. So we just did. And we had a lot of fun doing it.
I'm pretty diverse when it comes to songwriting. I've been writing, you go through different phases of your life where you're into, I was into like metal music, I was into country music for a while, pop music. So I have songs that I've written in all those genres, dance music. I believe I can write in any genre. It's just, having a melody and having good lyrics and knowing the type of music that you're trying to write and the audience you're trying to write for, and I think I'm pretty good at that.
Originally, my songwriting evolved around Irish traditional and Newfoundland traditional themes, but lately I've been writing songs about relationships, personal experiences, observations, etc.
Well, when I started writing songs, I wrote them particularly with myself, of course, but also with some friends. I wrote a lot of comedy, a lot of rock, a lot of love songs, love ballads, and of course a lot of experimental music with the keyboards and electronic stuff. It's funny because even though we're talking about something that I experimented with, all those years ago, it's something that never left me. I still presently write, almost every one of those styles today.
I mean, high school was mostly about, being in a rock band, so we did a lot of rock and a lot of metal and trying to come up with all these cool solos and, sweep picking and your hammer-ons and just your shredding. And then as I got into jazz, it got a little bit more simpler. Actually, I tried to play slower than playing fast all the time. And then once I graduated, now I had to put both the styles together, which it gets interesting from time to time because you can say a lot more by playing a lot less. The moment in your eyes when the butterflies seem to reach, the moment in your eyes my legs grow weak as I say, what can I do to make you love me? She whispers by placing your arms around me. The moment in your eyes, the skies seem to clear, seem to erase every trace of fear. So when can I then see you again? The moment in your eyes transcend. I'll wait for you in that moment of your eyes. Till then,
I think I do in that, although I like to write in a number of genres, I do have a style, my friends tell me, and I don't deny it when I set up my productions, that generally by the end of it, there's a lot of things going on all at the same time, counterpoint and melding different things together. so that it creates, you know, a climax for the end. But generally, I developed my own sort of guitar style, so my chords all have a certain dissonance, almost, if you will. Like I very rarely write in triads. You use chords, like everything's pretty rich harmonically.
Oh well, high school was mostly about the rock and roll, your heavy metal. It was all about like shredding and like your sweep picking. And I know I remember like writing all these like cool intricate solos on the computer and have it play back to me and then harmonize on top of it. And then as I got into jazz when I got to university, I started actually playing a lot slower and more romantic. And and then after I graduated, kind of putting both those styles together, I realized you can actually say a lot more by playing a lot less.
I don't know. The truth of it is, I don't know if there were elements of rhythm and stuff that were much more comedic. I mean, they're comedy in nature, right? We started off by doing stuff like rhyming stuff off like Johnny Clue. Well, Johnny Clue became the basis of a lot of our songs. The rhyming and trying to find rhymes, rhythms, and whatever. And I guess taking popular culture and rejigging popular culture to what our needs were at the time. So changing the words in the songs and making them, whether it's, making fun of Elton John and rewording his stuff, or, but again, a lot of it was more about satisfying an immediate need. So it was about, we're going to do this, we got to find a way to write a song about it. Whether it was a Friday night dance or a festival, or our friends. We wrote a lot of lyrics, a lot of tunes about our friends and stuff that we were doing at the time. Whether it was ridicule, and it was a lot of satire that was, I guess, essentially based in poking fun at our friends and situations and whatever. But I mean, once those things kind of started to mesh and they worked, well then, we were, there were cameras and there were mics, and we were, sent off to do stuff in studios, CBC, whatever, Radio Canada, and we just had fun with it, but I don't think we realized the fame that would come from it, at the time.
I have a pretty diversified writing style. Basically, it's because during my lifetime I've enjoyed different kinds of music. I went through a metal phase, dance music, a country phase. So as I went through those phases, I wrote songs. And so I believe that it doesn't really matter what genre I'm writing. It just matters what it is you're trying to bring forth, what it is you're trying to what story you're trying to tell.
Originally, I started writing with a kind of Irish Newfoundland theme, so from my traditional background. But I've been graduating more towards the Canadian folk music, trying to keep a theme of what's happening in life, a little bit of a love songs.
Okay, wait. I also love writing comedy songs. Something that makes, a person laugh is very important, and I'm good at it. And I have lots of friends who I've written with, and it's a great time. And it's the best for collaborating. If you want to write a song with somebody, comedy is the best.
When writing alone, 90% of my writing, all emotionally driven. Sad, happy, discontent. I never thought about the style prior to sitting and writing. It's like the style was ever present, if that makes sense to you. It flowed out, the energy flew out, And whatever instrument I had in my hands, whether it was the bass, the guitar, or the keyboards, it would cause me to write differently. The emotion was different.
I carry a book with me everywhere I go, so if I get something in my head, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or you hear something in a movie, or you're on the bus and you hear a conversation. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, get your book out, you write it down, you forget about it, and then when you're looking for inspiration, you open your book back and you're like, huh, what am I trying to say there? Can something be said? And so you go from there, and yeah, and sometimes sometimes you don't even need a melody. You just kind of just write like a poem, and then maybe the melody will come 3 weeks later, or a month later, or a year later. But at least it's written down. So
most of my writing has always been from events, I guess. Teenage years and early manhood, the 20s. You try and define yourselves, and and whatever. So I guess there's a lot of that. I guess because we were trying to create something that had never been done before, people were wanting to see themselves in what we're trying to do. People will come up to us after a show and say, on veut voir, on veut se trouver dans la narrative, which I guess is basically translation is kind of in your narrative. We want to see ourselves in your narrative. So I guess the lyrics were much more about talking about them, where it was fishing, where it was about hard times, unemployment. So they were socially responsible, socially justice driven. A lot of times. So yeah.
A lot of my songwriting has the same kind of a flavor as Canadian folk musicians.
Most of my songs are emotionally driven. Unless, of course, it's a collaborative thing. I'm writing with someone else. But for me, it has to come from within. It has to be raw. And I think about it. For me, personally, I think it's one of the hardest ways to write, because you've got to be in the moment. You've got to capture it. And like all emotional states of mind, it's something that's ever fleeing. It never sticks around long enough. So you're fighting to get the words out. You're fighting to get the emotional expression out. And then when it comes to me, after the song is done, the first thing I want to do is record it, because again, it's raw. And then of course you try to overdub that in the studio later and try to re-enhance those feelings that you had when you wrote the song. I love it because I got so much of my music now that whether I wrote it last year or 10 years ago, if I sing it for you or for myself, it's just like I just wrote it. All the feelings are present. So yeah, that's the way I get inspired to write my music.
People ask me if I need to be in a certain mood to write a song, and I don't. I don't need to be happy to write a dance song. I don't need to be sad to write a love song. I just basically think about what story I'm trying to tell, and I'm able to do it no matter what mood I'm in. I don't like to write a poem and then sing a melody to it later. I like to have a melody first and then write words to incorporate into that song.
Yeah, I think when at a fair, let's call it a low ebb in my life, and I was very, very productive with writing songs. It just seemed to be the go-to outlet, and not necessarily that the songs were sad. The songs were maybe a support, maybe get you up and going. And so yeah, you do tend to write more when when you're in a funk, but you're also allowed to be alone almost, and to sing around the house or do that. But today, it's more the inspiration I look is much more just what happens on the guitar and the music that comes out of that, and then apply lyrics after.
It's been 7 years ago since we first broke the ice. 7 miles to the drive-in, a movie would be nice. Together at the big screen, sharing glances and a smile. In the seventh heaven, holding hands all the while. It's been 7 years of good luck, the mirror will never crack. Our love keeps on growing, there's no need to look back. Like you've died and gone to heaven, 7th year will never itch. Where love is the grand prize and you know you struck it rich. She's my lucky number, my rainbow in the sun. 7 years have gone by and we're still having fun. I know in my heart there's many more to come. 7 years and counting, she's the only one. We'll sail the 7 seas, cross 7 continents, see the wonders of the world, together to be meant. You can't predict the future, but I'll tell you what I know. It's been 7 years of happiness and many more to go. She's my lucky number, my rainbow in the sun. 7 years have gone by and we're still having fun. I know in my heart there's many more to come. 7 years and counting, she's the only, she's my lucky number, my rainbow in the sun. 7 years have gone by and we're still having fun. I know in my heart there's many more to come. 7 years and counting, she's the only one. She's the only one. She's the only one. She's the only one.
Well, most times, or the great majority of my work has been collaborative. So there is, I guess, an initial thought or reaction from what's going on in my life or in the world, and you call somebody up and say, I got this idea for a song. Here's a couple of lines that I've written. What do you think? Do you think it's got any? And I'm not a musician, so I gotta always try to figure out if someone I'm going to work with is going to lay down some track that's going to make that the music, that the rhythm, that there's a melody there somewhere. So that's intrinsic in what I have to figure out, but who I want to work with to get the kind of melody feel that I'm looking for. When we worked on Wag the Dog, when we did a studio piece about where they were writing this song together, I wanted that particular shoot to be extremely authentic. And when the guy comes in and says, "We're supposed to write a song," and he picks a guitar, and Danny was a round hog, they used to call him Blue. That was a rolling shoe. Well, that was stemmed from an experience that I had lived not long before that, and when we shot it, I really want people to feel that kind of collaboration and how magical it can be, and how whimsical but magical.
The one thing I learned about myself over all these years is that I do not touch an instrument until I'm ready to write. Now, whether that be days, weeks, or months, that's how I do it. If I feel something coming on, some emotional outbursts, I'll pick up an instrument, and in no time at all, I'll have a melody, and I can begin writing a new song. What and who I write about, it's going to depend on the emotional expression, of course, that it surfaces itself. at the time I pick up the instrument.
So when it comes to writing songs, I use a few different approaches. One thing I always do is I always carry a book with me. And if I get something like an idea, or you hear something interesting on the news, or you're on the bus and you hear a conversation, you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Take your book out, write it down, forget about it. Another approach I use is, I call it forester writing, which is where you take your phone and you press record, and then you just kind of start playing the song and start saying whatever comes into your mind. And it all gets recorded. So what you have is like about 15-20 minutes of just random stuff that you said. Most of it will be garbage. That's the important part. Most of it will be garbage. But you might get a line or two that's really interesting. You're like, huh, that's kind of interesting. What can I use that for? And then you take those 2 lines and you can kind of build the song from those 2 lines or 3 lines, or who knows, maybe you'll have 5 or 10 lines that are good. Then you can kind of just put them together. And yeah, and sometimes you just need a piece of paper. You don't even need a guitar. You can just be walking down the street and you can write the entire thing in your head, and you just kind of have to write it down. So that's some of the ways that I approach songwriting.
Yeah, I'd have to think about what that question means. Because when I actually sit down to write a song, let's say, it's over the course of time. So I can't sit and write a song from beginning to end. It's not my mission. It's something that happens. Like I'll tell you. So how I write generally is sitting, whether I'm watching hockey or anything on the couch or noodling somewhere, and something will hit me, and then I'll record that snippet so I don't forget it. And just on a handheld recorder. And then I'll go back to it days, months later and say, okay, now I need the bridge, or now, let me do this 1,000 times and see what just evolves out of that. And it's usually happy mistakes, that lead you down another path.
Typically, I start off with a theme in mind when I'm writing a song, and I write the song around that. I go top to bottom chronologically, and the hardest part I find is trying to make the words rhyme.
I like to write songs by myself, but when I write with other people, I'm not going to lie, it's a bottle of sherry and it's a pen and paper. I like to listen to what's going on, because generally I'm going to be the lyricist and they're going to give me the melody. And I'm going to take that melody and I'm going to create the best song that I can. The reason why I say I like to have a bottle of sherry, it's just a way of saying I like to have a few drinks, or I like to be relaxed, so that, because I always think that the best songs come in that form of relaxation. If you listen to the Beatles, all those interviews you hear people, it's when they're in that state of mind where they don't worry and think too much. They're just thinking about the melody and they're totally engulfed. It's no different than when you're drinking and you're listening to music. It's so enjoyable. It's the same thing.
I've always written for myself. I've always been, I guess, much more of the opinion that this is my art form, and I have to be able to see myself in it. And I guess the evolutionary process from that, I guess after many years, how I venture off and work with others, is an important thing, but I never crossed that line of surrendering myself to someone else's whim. If I don't feel like what I'm writing is authentic, and in the moment I don't feel comfortable, and so that's kind of where at my age in the moment, that's where I feel most comfortable.
Basically, when I write a song, I write it for myself. I do have songs that I've written about people or for people. Like I've written songs about my wife, We've written songs for plays when we were kids. We've written a song, me and Israel, we've written a song for the Olympics. You might not have heard it. It's an amazing song. But basically when I'm writing a song, I'm happy if it turns out a certain way, and that's about it. I'm writing for myself.
I definitely gear my songs towards a specific person or a group of people. And yeah, like if I'm writing a love song, it's usually about a girl. If I'm writing a breakup song, it's usually about past love. If I'm writing a dark song, it might be about, you know, a person that I know closely, or maybe even me sometimes. So yeah, it really depends on the type of song I'm trying to write that day.
Well, mostly I'm writing for myself. I'm just taking my thoughts, putting it down on paper, and putting some music to it. And then if friends and family come over, I'll play my music, and typically it goes over well.
A lot of my songs are based on people around me, but to put it in a context, who I write for, it's cheaper than a psychologist. You know how much they charge per hour? Fuck.
I'm writing for somebody who I think is who likes the stuff that I write. So really, it's me. I don't know. I guess you really want to do it. You know, you can have a career. Go to Nashville, write songs, and probably make, you know, some good money. You know, you start at the bottom of the pile and work your way up into people's consciousness. And that's a craft, and that's a great thing. I love playing Willie Nelson songs, you know, and they're crafted really well. But my stuff that I write, you know, it's more of a, I call it the music of my life, you know, and that surrounds me, and so that's where it's an audience of one maybe. But I've got friends. We have these listening sessions, and we'll blast the music, and everybody will, you know, I hope that they like them as well as I do. So there is an audience there. Okay. I think tomorrow I'll go fishing on the faraway side. And if I turn up missing, no, I'm not trying to hide. You see, I've run every back road and every rainy highway, and I've picked up that great load and brought it back for my pay. I think tomorrow I'll go fishing on the faraway side. And if I turn up missing, no, I'm not trying to hide. And boy, it's been a while since I've seen you smile. Is everything alright? What's the matter, boy? You've been down so long. Well, get up and dry your eyes now. I think tomorrow I'll go fishing off the Providence Bridge. And if I come up swinging, I just look over the ridge. You see, I've played all the white notes, all the black in between, and I've sung every grace note for nobody but me. And oh, it's been a while since I've seen you smile. Is everything alright? What's the matter, boy? You've been down so long. Get up and dry your eyes now. I think tomorrow I'll go fishing on the faraway side.
I've written in both, as a songwriter and as a collaborator. When it comes to love songs, you want people to be able to follow the story. But when it comes to something that's erratic, full of emotion, and you don't know where the end result, where it's going to take you from the beginning to the end of the song, those are always my favorite. Yeah. So abstract is my favorite, but I've indulged in both.
Definitely a storyteller, linear. No abstract. I don't believe in, not that I don't believe, there are songs that I like that are abstract. But for me, and the way I feel, the way I like to write, there has to be a story. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that it feels complete. So linear is how I write songs.
Most of my songs, I take a linear approach to it. There are metaphors in there. I just look at what's happening around me and write a song around it and try to make it rhyme and have good music to it.
It depends on the type of songs. You know, for me, I don't usually write a linear type of song that tells a story. You know, I have worked with other people and collaborated on like country songs and and shop them around. And on that, you're very linear in your storyline, and but for me, that's not very pleasurable. So and I don't really care about that. I would prefer to be fairly abstract. But having said that, you balance between, if you're going to do that, sometimes it can be trite, like when you're linear. So it's almost something I just try to avoid by default. Yeah.
Definitely abstract. I let people kind of take what I'm saying and then interpret it the way that they want to. And in terms of my style, it would be rock mixed with jazz components, like jazz progressions, melodic structure, borrowed from all these all this jazz training that I had. So I think that would be my kind of style of writing and playing.
I guess most of everything we've ever done has been linear. I guess we grew up at a time where Newfoundland was in a very cultural effervescence, right? Where Tim and I was doing all this stuff, the Mummer song, and the songwriting was one thing, but it was also the regurgitation, I guess, or the rehashing of some of this stuff. So we do wacky stuff like heavy metal versions of the Mummer song or whatever. But from a purely songwriting perspective, whatever we wrote about was real. It was what we were living at the time, and there wasn't a whole lot of of interpretation.
My favorite song that I've written is 7 Years and Counting. My present wife and I had been married for 7 years at that time. I was sitting in the living room and I said, there's a theme. 7 is a lucky number. And I kept thinking about all the things that matched up with 7. And the next thing you know, I had a whole page written.
I was thinking of that the other day, and it may be cliche, and you may get all kinds of songwriters saying it. You know, they're all your babies. And how can you pick one out? At any particular time, for any particular purpose, yeah, there's some favorites. You know, ones that tug at your heartstrings, or ones that make you glad, or that type of thing. But yeah, they're all, I got to tell you though, there are some that are not my favorites. And I wish I'd never written them or even had anything to do with them, because they're terrible.
I think my favorite song that I've written is called Living in This World. It's a song about how we as people are leaving this world for our kids. You know, how we're leaving it for this younger generation. Are we ruining the world? Are we spoiling it with all the wars, with the pollution? And I think it's a story that rings true, I don't know, 40 years ago, and it will ring true in 40 years from now.
I don't think I have a best song that I've ever written, but there are a couple of my favorite ones. Like I just wrote a song recently called "The Moment in Your Eyes," and that's for my singer in my band who actually just got married last year. So that song's for him, and I really enjoy playing that because it's got these really beautiful jazz kind of chords with this interesting progression. So that's a nice one. I also have this one song called "I'm an Idiot." It's kind of funny, but it's also a breakup song. So, and it's got these really like dear words to my heart. So that's definitely one of my favorites, and it's a tearjerker. So that's a good thing. And I have a song called "Coffee," which it's one of my more abstract ones. It kind of makes people laugh and think at the same time. So yeah, those would be, I guess, my top 3 favorites that I've ever written.
If I had to choose, it would be a song called La Réalité. It was, I guess, a shot in the dark of trying to portray what living at 14 years old was, I guess, all about. And you know, it wasn't. It was quick. You know, stardom is a weird thing. You know, you write a song and 2 weeks later you're performing it on TV. But I'm proud of that one because it was a good collaboration. It was co-written by, you know, a buddy of mine, and I sang it too. I was a vocalist on it too. So yeah, it's probably one of the most proud of.
A lot of people tell me their favorite is like the Credit River, Missing You, I'll Keep on Holding On, If I Slip and Fall. But now for me, I like a song full of turmoil. So I think presently it would be a song called Out of Here. Since I met you, always fooling around, leading me on till I reacted. And then you complain when I questioned your intentions. You're only fooling yourself, someone's gonna get hurt, there's just no question. Somebody get me out of here. Somebody get me out of here. Oh, somebody somebody get me out of here. Somebody get me out of here. It's no secret to me, you've always wanted to be a deeper person. Spend all of your time creating things in your mind, but now I get it. I'm losing all hope, losing control of my emotions. Get out of my way, I don't want to play with these illusions. No, somebody get me out of here. Somebody get me out of here. Oh, somebody get me out of here. Oh, somebody get me out of here. Somebody get me out of here. Somebody get me out of here. Oh, somebody get me out of here. Oh, somebody get me out of here.
When I was younger, I was really aspiring to be a famous musician, as any young person would. I'm at the stage of my life now. I'm content with just writing songs, doing my home recordings, interviews like this, you name it, and I'm satisfied with that.
I mean, if I make money out of it, yeah, obviously that'd be great. But in the end of it, no, I do it because I love it, not because of the money.
Fame is something that I have acquired. I think it's a personal thing. I do believe that I'm famous on a level that I'm happy with. I'm not rich and famous, but I do enjoy knowing that people are out there listening to our music and liking it.
You know what? As long as it builds up your ego and gives you the will to keep going in writing music, you know, it can't hurt you. Indulging in it too much like we did 20 years ago, that's a mistake.
In my brain, and that's what I say in the music of my life, in my brain, I mean, I've justified it so that I think I'm really good. and so I give myself all the kudos and everything. But as far as I know, you know, you reach an age where all of a sudden you go, well, you know, what am I going to do? You know, get a gig at a coffee house, or it's not happening, and I don't need it, and I never really sought it out, except for the occasional, you know, coffee house or that type of thing. But so fame, I don't regret not having any. I'm not sure the type of stuff I write is for everybody. Even if, you know, my next phase, I want to write a novel, but I know I'm going to have to do it for myself because it's going to be abstract, obtuse. It's going to go here and there and not be everybody's cup of tea. But
early on in anyone's career, fame is important because it's that immediate. You know, it's the consequence, right? It's what you feel. But I think as we go on in life and as we have more experience in the industry and it becomes much more secondary, I think there has to be a balance. And I think at where I am at my age now, I think I've been able to do that between what stems from my artistic side and what I'm trying to preserve in terms of trying to raise a family and trying to keep them away from that.
Well, I enjoy everything that involves music, including interviews like this. I hope somebody will view this and be inspired by it.
When I was first asked to do this documentary, I was honored. It's nice to see that the younger generation are looking at what the older generation has done, and I do feel very honored, and I hope that this will help, maybe stimulate somebody, maybe one person, to be creative and to not be fearful and write their own music.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Some of the things that I've said today, I've never actually said it out loud, so it's kind of nice and interesting to see what I think about myself as a person and as a songwriter, so that's very interesting. And we're going on tour next month, so that's where I'm going to be doing most of my music for the next 2 or 3 months, and after that we're going to probably hit up the studio, start recording some new material. So it's going to be a fun year.
I guess this experience has been, rich, but at the same time a little bit of an emotional upheaval, because a lot of the stuff that I've done didn't really have a whole lot of time to reflect on it, and I guess these questions forced me to reflect on what it's all about and how they all come together and how I make sense of it all. So I guess from that standpoint, it was a very interesting process, and I guess if my children watch this, eventually, they'll understand a bit more about me and about my motivations, and I guess what keeps me on the road at 6 months of the year, away from them, and this is what I do.
I think not only is it's thought provoking, and I'm so pleased that you asked about that, because I don't get an outlet to even think about that and put it together, and in your life, why did you do that? Why did you do it so often? And what were your influences? I mean, them intrinsically, but it's been a great cathartic experience in saying it, and if somebody else hears what I'm saying, and there's that simpatico thing. I mean, that's why I look at, say, YouTube. I'm looking for similar experiences in many cases, if not how to do my nails to play guitar or any other instructional videos. I'm planning on this book, and I've been putting a lot of stuff together, and I'm really looking forward to that journey. But I always think, or have been thinking, would that usurp the time that I would use playing music? Would I give up that part? And it's impossible. It's impossible. It's just so, as I say, ingrained in your psyche. If you're of that bent, some people can give up the guitar and put it in a corner and never look at it again. But for me, it's like it's part of life. It's part of every day. So. Yeah, it's always be there.
Being an artist allows one to see the world differently. A lot of people refer to us, as a little bit crazy, a little bit cuckoo sometimes. But sometimes you have to ponder and think, are we the ones that are really that strange? If you look around you, 90% of the people will live their lives doing exactly as everyone else. Being different is something to be celebrated.
I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I want to do it. I know everybody out there wants me to do it. They're looking forward to it. We got letters, all that. Look, look. I grew up in the '80s. Okay, and '80s was about heavy metal music. It was about Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and Bruce Dickinson. The rhyme of the ancient mariner. There goes the mariner. There goes the ship. By the way, that's what it was about. And all of a sudden, we're doing the whole Christmas thing. At a Newfoundland, Christmas times, you went around, you dressed up in your weird costumes, you banged on people's doors, and you bummed for beer. And you got drunk and had a good time. Now, for years and years, I've been trying to square that circle. Put those things together between the hard rock side and the Newfoundland traditional music side. Hang around for a while. Let me take you on a journey.
Yeah, you could have picked a better night to go mumming, old man. Scattered beer is alright for free, but a lot of work to go get her, old man.
How about this house?
Yeah, man. Give her a try.
Huh? Come on, try it again.
Give her a try.
Try it louder.
Yeah. You know, next time you think about picking a house, actually let us know, I mean. Get thirsty now, old man. If I could find you, if I could see you in the snow, I'd kick you in the ass. Now I can't see you in the bloody snow.